Welcome to There's No Place Like Home, the radio show coming to you on WRXB 1590 AM and Pinellas County Connection TV. This program is presented to you as an opportunity to hear information that can help you fulfill the dream of owning your very own home. We also share information about upcoming special events and programs to help you enjoy the good life in Pinellas County, as well as other items of interest. The sponsor of this program is the Housing Finance Authority of Pinellas County, which offers the First-Time Homebuyers Program, your key to home ownership, helping people in Pinellas, Pasco, and Polk counties make their dreams of home ownership a reality. I'm Frank Bowman, your host for today's show. Jane Merlin, my usual co-host, will return again next month. Today we'll be talking about a very important topic that you may not think about. However, it is something that may affect all of us at one time or another. That's fair housing. April is Fair Housing Month, and coming up in a few moments, we'll be speaking to representatives from the Pinellas County Office of Human Rights. Our guests are Paul Valenti, the Director, and Mark Esparza, Housing Manager. However, before we begin our discussion, I'd like to share some information from our sponsor, the Housing Finance Authority of Pinellas County. The HFA is offering its First-Time Homebuyers Program for individuals in Pinellas, Pasco, and Polk counties who have never owned a home, have not owned a home in the last 3 years, or who are veterans. The HFA offers a low rate on its 30-year fixed-rate mortgage, and if you need a little help with down payment and closing costs, they can help you with that as well with the Home Key Second Mortgage. To get your key to homeownership, call 727-464-8210 or visit the website at www.pinellascounty.org/community/HFA. Now it's my pleasure to introduce our guests, Paul Valenti, the Director of the Office of Human Rights. Paul assumed the duties of Director of Pinellas County's Office of Human Rights last year. Paul is also an attorney who is licensed both here in Florida and in Connecticut, and he's also licensed to present before the U.S. Supreme Court. Mark Esparza is the housing manager for the Office of Human Rights. He joined the county in 1999, where he investigated civil rights complaints. He is a certified mediator and investigates claims of discrimination in housing, employment, and public accommodations under both county and federal law. Welcome to There's No Place Like Home, Paul. Mark?
Thank you, Frank. Thank you for having us here.
Very nice to have you here. With April being Fair Housing Month, we try to do a show featuring this topic every year, and we're very happy to have you all back here. Paul, let's begin with you and start by hearing how the last year has gone for you since you've arrived in Pinellas.
Yeah, it's been quite a wonderful trip, actually. I was fortunate enough to succeed in the directorship from Mr. Leon Russell, who's a legend here locally. But Leon was kind enough to give to me, as his bequest, a great staff. Mark, all my colleagues, our colleagues at the Office of Human Rights. Plus, we have a Board of County Commissioners who is very supportive of what our office does. The appointing authorities are constitutional officers, all work well with our office. So it's been great, and I'm very fortunate to be here.
Well, that sounds wonderful. It is a wonderful place to work, and as a total team, I think Pinellas County is really doing a wonderful job. And our office has to interact with other departments all the time, and we always find just wonderful people to work with. But what is the role of the Office of Human Rights, and why is it important to the Pinellas County residents?
Absolutely. We, as you've touched upon in your intro, we enforce civil rights laws within Pinellas County, and we do so pursuant to contracts that we have with some agencies of the federal government, either HUD, Housing and Urban Development, or the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. And so we enforce locally throughout Pinellas federal law and local county ordinances which prohibit discrimination in housing, employment, and in places of public accommodation. And it's important to the citizens of Pinellas County because, you know, things that are beyond people's control, things that they have no control over, that is no fault of an individual, shouldn't be held against them when they apply for a job or seek promotion or seek a housing opportunity. And that's basically the underlying premise of all the laws that we enforce.
Well, discrimination has been a topic for most of my life, and a lot of folks probably think that that's a non-issue anymore, but give us some examples of some of the cases your office handles.
Sure. It could be as simple as a person who believes they were not offered an opportunity, a failure to hire. I applied for a job, they didn't hire me, and it was because of my race. That, of course, is illegal, and if somebody believes that to be the case, we would investigate that. In a housing context, and we'll touch on this more later in depth with Mark, I'm sure, somebody who's disabled and needs an accommodation to be able to, a person with a disability needs an accommodation to the rules or regulations regarding their housing, needs an accommodation to those rules to enjoy their housing opportunity. We can help in those situations.
Mm-hmm. Is there one kind of issue that's more prevalent than others in Pinellas in this day and age? Or?
Yeah, there is, in fact, Frank. That's a great question. We've seen a spike in disability-related claims, both in housing and employment. In the employment context, it's typically a request for maybe a bigger computer screen for persons who are visually impaired or some other accommodation to allow them to continue to do their job. In the housing context, we've seen a marked increase in cases relating to support animals, persons with disabilities who need a support animal to allow them to enjoy their housing.
Is this because of an increase in service animals, or is this people becoming more aware of their rights?
I think it's actually a function of both. I think it's a function of an aging demographic. The baby boomer generation, of course, is starting to get to the age where physical infirmities may become more frequent. And it's also because we do education and outreach efforts. There's a growing understanding or greater recognition of civil rights laws within our community. So I think it's a combination of both.
All right. Well, I mentioned in the introduction that April is Fair Housing Month. Give us some background on how Fair Housing got its own month and why it's in April.
Sure. Briefly, the history of you recall in the 50s was the initiation of the civil rights movement led by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Those activities, those efforts led to the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited discrimination at the federal level in employment and housing. But the housing protections had no real enforcement mechanisms. Tragically, on April 4th of 1968, Dr. King was assassinated. And within a week, President Johnson was able to corral the Congress into passing fair housing laws that did have real teeth in regards to enforcement. And so that's why April is now recognized as Fair Housing Month, because that was the month in 1968 when the Fair Housing Act with enforcement for housing was passed.
That's very interesting. So it's the act of passing that law along with the establishment of Fair Housing Month is sort of pays homage to Dr. King and the work that he had done.
Absolutely, in large measure.
Excellent. Very good. And, I hope a lot of people know that story, because to me it's very interesting, and I think it's very, very suiting to the man and to the cause that we're talking about here. I know that in years past, your office has participated in some sort of recognition event for Fair Housing Month. Is there anything going to be highlighting the event this year?
Absolutely. We're very excited. On April 19th of this year, we're doing an event at the Center Club in Tampa. We, in conjunction with other local governments and nonprofit organizations, have put together what's called the Tampa Bay Fair Housing Consortium. And every year we put an event together that recognizes Fair Housing Month. We're doing it again this April 19th at the Center Club in Tampa, and we have just an absolute sterling lineup. We have one of the Deputy Chief for Housing and Civil Rights Enforcement at the Department of Justice, Attorney Michael Maurer, who's going to join us. We have CNN's legal correspondent, Avery Friedman, who will be joining us. And we have Chuck Bonemer, who's a nationally recognized fair housing trainer, realtor, to talk about diversity on the internet. So it's a sterling lineup. I don't know if the camera's going to be able to catch it, but I am going to hold it up real quick. And we would encourage people, if they're interested, to call our office and inquire more about this event. We're going to submit for continuing legal education credits for attorneys and continuing education credits for realtors, but property managers, leasing agents, sales agents, attorneys, a whole range of professionals could gain knowledge from this event.
I was just going to ask who the target audience is, but it's essentially people who are either responsible for, I guess, enacting or following the fair housing rules, and people who might be in an enforcement role?
Absolutely. And you know what? Let's expand it a little more even, because we're encouraging association presidents or officers for condo boards, homeowners associations. They too can benefit, because as officers of these associations and boards, they should know what the civil rights laws are.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's an excellent. And once again, that's going to be April 19th?
April 19th at the Center
day?
Club. That's a Friday. Friday, April 19th at the Center Club, West Shore Boulevard in Tampa, Florida. We're looking forward to it.
Is it an all-day event then?
It is an all-day event. Well, we're kicking off at just before 9, 8:45, and we're going to end hopefully around 4 o'clock. $25 in advance. That gets you not only the program, but we're going to give you lunch with the program. So it's really a bargain. You can't get this kind of either continuing legal education credits or continuing education credits for that kind of money with a meal.
That sounds very, very interesting. And last year's event was similar to this, was it not?
Very similar. We had a great turnout. I think it was about 175 persons, but we're going to look to push for 200 this year.
Sounds great. In regard to fair housing issues, are you finding that there are many here in Pinellas County? What's our track record locally?
Yeah, we have a pretty much consistent yearly flow of cases, but as I said, what I think the thing that's interesting to us is the type of cases over the years. As we referenced earlier, there seems to be a real trend towards disability cases, particularly as it relates to service animals. Mm-hmm. That's probably, and Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, I think that's the leading type of case we take in regards to fair housing claims in our office.
Mm-hmm. How does something like that usually unfold? I mean, what are the typical circumstances?
Well, and just like most normal complaints, what will happen is it'll begin with the complainant. Somebody who feels that they've been treated unfairly in a housing transaction. And if it's going to be a service animal type issue, what they will do, they will come to us. We'll get a brief description of how they feel they were wronged. Mm-hmm. We'll look into the matter. We will formalize it into a document, a complaint of discrimination that will be served on the respondent. Respondent at that point will respond and address the issues. And our job is, as a neutral investigatory agency, is to look into the defenses and try to corroborate either the charging party or the complainant's assertions to see if there was a violation of law, or to corroborate the respondent's defenses to see if they're sincere and if they're actually accurate. And so at that point, we will have to make a decision. We will interview witnesses. We will look over documents, investigate third-party records if we have to, code enforcement records, building records, but we will get all the information possible to make a decision. And we're usually allowed to do that within about a 100-day time day limit to get it done. And during that time, we also offer a conciliation or mediation to the parties. Okay. So we will invite them to sit down to see if they can work it out themselves. And that's part of the process.
So this is actually a legal process that's initiated when the complaint is filed. However, you create an alternative mediated solution opportunity.
That's right, yes. And it's very much a legal process. Yeah.
Okay, so if the issue isn't resolved, I guess mutually between the two parties, what are the consequences of somebody violating the Fair Housing Act?
Well, at that point, if we have to make a decision in the matter, we will make a decision. We will have legal concurrence from the legal department. And if we have to, we will proceed with litigation against the housing provider, if that's going to be a violation of law. And so we will take up the case on behalf of the complainant in basically in a state forum, a federal forum, or an administrative law judge forum, depending on which forum the parties will elect. But we will be responsible and authorized to carry that case forward on behalf of the complainant.
And if somebody is found guilty of violating fair housing, what are some of the sanctions or fines?
Boy, what you're going to be having is going to be your normal civil damages. That is what the person lost, what's going to make them whole. But also you can have fines that will go to the county, that will go to HUD. And so there are some real consequences in addition to any type of damage to people's reputation or their finances. And it's a serious matter. But there's going to be types of compensable damages that can be addressed. And that's what usually happens at the end.
And it's interesting that the Civil Rights Act specifically allows for the recovery of emotional damages, too, or punitive damages. So that's one of many reasons why we strongly encourage parties to sit down and mediate, because there's large exposure to liability, potential liability.
Yeah.
Give us an idea of how many people are impacted when they are affected by fair housing issues. I mean,
Mark has the number of cases that we do.
Yeah.
Well, we're on an, it's kind of, we do about 40 to 50 cases a year of housing discrimination that come forward. That's not all the inquiries that we get from the public, because a lot of times people can inquire and can resolve it on their own. But for the most part, we do get a consistent number of cases every single year. But if you look at the county, what do we have? About 900,000 to maybe a million residents that are here, depending on the time of the year. And all of those persons, or most of those persons, have the right to file a complaint. And so we have a large number of persons. This is a highly concentrated metropolitan area. And the persons can file a complaint, and so there's a lot of potential activity out there. And we get our fair share of it, though.
You mentioned different times of the year and our population changing. Do many of these regulations also apply to tourists and temporary residents?
Yeah. They would. And that's a very good question, because if somebody's going to come down here looking for housing, and if it's going to be housing covered by the Fair Housing Act, that is something that's not going to be transient, but something they're going to return to as their residence, someplace they're receiving mail. Well, they have equal opportunity to be able to live there and to be free from harassment, from discrimination. That's a right. That's a constitutional policy of the United States. And so we have the laws to enforce it. And it's open to all.
And we see that a lot. As we were saying before with service animals, the typical scenario could be a person from the north, a retiree. This is their winter residence. They come down, and now they have coming down for the first time their support animal.
Yes.
Fair housing issues arise.
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense, because they've become dependent or used to having the service animal in another location where it has probably been worked out. They come here to the same condo or the same mobile home park that they've been coming to for years, and it becomes an issue.
Absolutely. That is a very typical fact pattern we see.
Well, how do fair housing and discrimination issues in general impact the community in general? I mean, is it possible for an area to get a bad reputation, or?
Well, I tend to think that one of the things that it applies to any type of organization that has could be perceived as a discriminatory impact, and that is you're going to have persons. If they believe it's unfair, they're not going to be necessarily loyal, right? You're going to have issues with morale, in whether it's in an employment setting or in a housing setting. You're going to have persons who are just inherently think it's unfair. And what you have is a lack of trust, a lack of cooperation, a broken relationship between the parties. And then you have people accusing each other of damages. And so you have a lot of finger pointing, a lot of issues like that. So it can be very damaging emotionally to people. Some people can't sleep. Some people have a lot of stress when they go through these types of events. You'll have people losing money, losing housing opportunities. They might want to have bought a certain condo at a great price, but they could no longer get it. And so to them, it's real damages, real harms, and they need a place to turn to, and we're the agency they can turn to for those types of issues.
Sure, and for a community, if I could just add, the more that a community is integrated, the less likely there will be misunderstandings for reasons that they shouldn't matter, such as race, national origin, gender. And plus, and thankfully I don't believe this is the case here in Pinellas County, but, in instances where communities get a rap about being discriminatory, that could have an economic impact. Employers might not want to move in to do business knowing that some of their employee base won't be welcomed. So it's important, and it has economic importance as well.
I know there's been some issues in the past where local ordinances and support or opposition to, say, gay rights and things have actually resulted in campaigns to reduce tourism and or convention attendance and things like that. Again, for me, who's been aware of this situation since I was very young, it's hard to believe that there's still a major issue. You've identified the primary basis for complaints lately, but do we still have a lot of racially oriented situations?
Yeah,
you do. It's going to be, race is usually going to be within the top three.
Okay.
Your traditional, you're going to have disability, gender, race type issues, and it's still somewhat consistent with past trends of different treatment allegations or refusal to rent type allegations, but probably reflective of the demographics. We get probably more disability-related cases and issues like that. And so it's actually, you're seeing a changing in the trends.
Right.
Yeah, and even though disability has eclipsed race, and even though I think as a society we've made great strides in regards to race relations, it's not as if it's gone away. It has continuing relevance even today.
Yeah, that's very well. If you look at studies, they still show a disparate treatment in mortgage lending, mortgage insurance. And so when they look at large studies, they still have unexplained gaps in treatment.
Well, it's very interesting. Well, Mark, I understand that you are probably lead the department's efforts in housing violations. We talked earlier, you said there's a new HUD mobile app that helps you or helps individuals with fair housing issues?
There sure is. And, HUD has a variety of apps out there. If you go to the App Store, they'll have apps about affordable housing, about how to buy a house, assistance in different endeavors related to housing. But when it comes to the Fair Housing app, it's a fantastic little app. It really is. I encourage people to look at it. It'll make you an instant expert. That app will cover your fair housing rights. It'll cover what types of properties are covered. It'll give you links to further assistance on the HUD website. About the regulations, about consent decrees. It'll also let you file a complaint right there in the app itself in English or Spanish. And seems to be very functional. Whoever did it did a great job because it's well organized, it's clear, and it's brief. So it's a great app.
And folks just go out to the HUD website and search for that?
Yes, I think on the HUD website they'll have a link to pages that have been optimized for mobile access, but for the most part, if you're on an Apple item, you're going to go to iTunes and download it right there. You just search for HUD Fair Housing. It'll pop up within the top 5 search results.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this app apparently would be beneficial to both individuals who want to understand their own rights and then for people who are in the role of interacting with the public and need to understand the rules?
Oh, I say so, because it really does a good job explaining what would be prohibited, the type of actions. Then it does a good job of describing what are the covered bases. That is the race, color, sex, national origin, familial status, disability, and sexual orientation. Well, at least not on the federal level, but on the local level, we handle sexual orientation. But the app will cover all of those items and gets right to the point quickly.
So you use this in your daily activities now? I noticed you showed it to me on the phone earlier.
I have it right here, but of course I prefer a larger screen. If I'm on my desk, I'll go ahead and use the proper instruments that I have right here because this thing is just going to be for on the run. It's going to be usually for consumer consumption for the most part. Something that anybody can use, but even property managers and those in the business will be able to avail themselves of it.
Well, you talked a little bit earlier about the process that people go through and what takes place. What's the time frame? You said 100 days. I mean, are most issues resolved in that time frame?
That's what is expected of us. Basically, we have a statutory written into the law, 100-day time limit in which to complete these matters. That's what is desired by HUD, and that is what is pushed by HUD. Sometimes it takes a little bit less. Sometimes it takes a little bit more, really depending on the cooperation of the parties, the complexity of the issues, and any other types of issues that go on in the case. But for the most part, it can be done, and a lot of the cases can be resolved if the parties are participating and cooperating and giving us the information that we need.
Do you find that most cases are resolved through some sort of mutual agreement and mediation, or do they go beyond that?
You know, I would say that a good maybe 25 to 30, 35% of the cases are resolved through voluntary resolutions.
And I'm sorry, and the nice thing is we have 2 volunteers with our office that do a wonderful job. As Mark just said, 25 to 30% of all our housing cases get mediated. But of those cases where both parties choose to mediate, the success rate is even higher. So our mediators, they're both certified, and they do a great job of bridging the difference between the parties and reaching a resolution with which both can live.
Well, that's very interesting. And I guess if somebody has a complaint filed against them, this becomes a very important educational process for them as well. What other kind of educational opportunities are there? I know we talked about this event, but on an ongoing basis, are there places where landlords, property managers, and all can go?
Absolutely, and I'll let Mark finish. But the one thing that we're doing now that I think is really exciting is we've just started handling the fair housing training component for the Pinellas Realtors Organization. So basically, all new licensees, when they have their orientation initiation classes relating to the real estate industry, they were kind enough to invite us to come down and lead a conversation about fair housing and civil rights. So I'm really excited about that because they're going to, they get it as part of their licensure, but we really hammer the point home just before they go out and fully embarking on their careers.
Yeah.
And then Mark's aware of the other.
Yeah. Well, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, as they always say. And so we're a big believer in that. If people need to hear or to understand fair housing law, we will come out to their property upon request. And we do it all the time. We go out to associations and do meet and greets and question and answer type sessions with them, because what we want is the people to have the information so they can make the best decisions possible. And so we will do so, and that's what we do right now. So if anybody does need our services, please feel free to give us a call, and we'll come out.
And we do that free of charge. I just need to, that's probably implicit, but we do that free of charge.
And also, I know you guys are referred to as the Pinellas County Fair Housing Office or Office of Human Rights, but you have jurisdiction over all areas of Pinellas County, correct?
That is correct.
There's not separate operations in our larger cities or anything?
No. At some time in the past, there had been different offices. The city of St. Pete had its own office, but several years prior, they all merged within the county office, our office. And so, our jurisdiction reaches throughout the borders, or to the borders of Pinellas County, throughout Pinellas County.
And then the event on the 19th is going to be a combination of Pinellas and Hillsborough combined?
Exactly.
Okay. Excellent.
That's exactly right.
Well, you mentioned a few minutes ago people can call your office. Tell folks how to get in touch with your office.
Okay, well, our main line is going to be 727-464-4880. We're located on the 5th floor, right downtown Clearwater on 400 South Fort Harrison. You can always call us, or you can visit our site on the internet. It's a good full-service site, and we have everything that's going to be what the public would need. But they can always feel free to drop in to see us. We will listen to them and take their complaint should they need to come in, and or else even visit them at their house should they need that.
Okay, so they just need to call in. Give us that number again.
727-464-4880.
All right, that's for the Office of Human Rights at Pinellas County. Got just a couple of minutes left. What's any closing comments or things you would like to emphasize?
Well, as Mark had indicated earlier, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And every speaking opportunity that I get regarding fair housing, and any speaking opportunity, I try to underscore that we'd much rather help someone walk through an issue in a friendly, conversational manner than possibly be confronting them in an investigatory manner where it's a little more for them probably adversarial. So we really encourage folks, if you're a property manager and you have a fair housing issue, or you think you do, or you're not sure if you do, we'd much prefer that you give us a call and pick our brains, pick our minds. Let us help you try to walk through it as best we see it to avoid a problem before it even occurs. And the Barney Fife method of nipping it in the bud, but with greater competence than Barney Fife.
Good approach, bad execution there. But from what I understand, your office does a marvelous job, and we really appreciate it. And we appreciate you being here today. We've got to wrap up. We're out of time already. Time always goes quickly when you've got great guests here, and I appreciate that.
We appreciate you, Frank. Thanks.
I'd like to thank our guests, Paul Valenti and Mark Esparza, with the Pinellas County's Office of Human Rights. We'd also like to thank Pinellas County Communications Department and, of course, our friends at WRXB 1590 AM Radio. We look forward to having you join us again next month. And if you missed any part of this show or would like to view past shows, check out our website or catch us on YouTube. I'm Frank Bowman. Thanks for tuning in, and remember, there's no place like home.